Hey, everybody, beer and cheese, a perfect match, an opportunity to create unique events in your tap room. We are excited to have Warren and Adam Levy for a conversation on how to establish a cheese program at your brewery. We're going to talk about types of cheeses, how to source them, how much to order, and proper care. You will leave this session hungry for a game plan on how to make cheese an added part of your tap room experience. But before we dive deep into cheese, let's get to know our guest. And Cara, because you are to the right of me, you get to go first.
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Hi guys in the brewery world. I'm Cara Warren. I am a cheese sales rep for Isigny Mère, so that's a dairy cooperative. But I also have the pleasure of being a host of a podcast called Cutting the Curd, and the quote unquote cheese wife and expert of cheese for Adam Levy for the New York International Cheese Competition. Therefore, an all around curd nerd, and I'm happy here to talk about cheese today.
I love all the puns so far. It's going to be a great conversation today. Adam, you're up.
Sure. My name is Adam Levy. I'm known as the alcohol professor and today also the cheese professor. I started the New York International Spirits Competition 14 years ago, followed by the wine competition, now the New York International Beer Competition, International Cider Competition 5 years ago. We showcase the winners from our competitions on our sites, The Alcohol Professor, as well as The Cheese Professor. And we try to do pairing articles as well, showing winning beers and ciders from our competitions with winning cheeses. So very happy to be here. Really happy that Cara's on this platform because Cara's just a great voice in the cheese industry. She's very modest about it, but she's won some cheese awards and cheese competitions herself in the cheesemonger world, and she has great knowledge. I'm really happy to have her A on our team and B, on this podcast with you.
Awesome. And Cara, Adam's bragging about you a little bit. So what's one of the awards that you're most proud of that you have under your belt?
Oh gosh. Well, okay. Be prepared. It's super geeky. There is a Guild de Fromagères, which is basically like a chapter of monks based in France that have given me an award, and I've been inducted into their guild. So I'm a Guild de Fromagère, a garde jour, as they say. And I'm most proud of that because it's a very strange, unique thing to be a part of. So I'm proud of that. And then I guess the second most, sorry, I'll add one more, is I'm a certified cheese professional from the American Cheese Society. And you have to study a lot. You have to put, I think, at least 10,000 hours of work into it. So it's not the easiest thing to get, but I'm super proud I was able to pass and do that.
And I imagine you have to eat a little bit of cheese along the way.
I mean, that's the only way to learn about cheese. You can study all you want, but I think the best way is to be a cheesemonger at a shop and eat all the cheese you can. And I mean, how else can you tell the difference between like 10 different cow's milk cheeses? You just have to keep tasting. It's like beer. You have to keep tasting it.
I am so excited to learn from you today. Those are some amazing accomplishments. So let's just dive in. I love beer. I love cheese. Why should a brewery consider adding a cheese program in their tap room?
I think it's to be more dynamic, period. I mean, not a lot of breweries have it yet. I think you can go really local with it. You can go imported. Again, it's all about style and grace. And just like putting that together is very cool. And also, I think it adds revenue. I think if you can figure out the math and the details of it and start to understand cheese a little better, you can pull in some money on it.
I mean, I know when I'm in the tap room, food's going to keep me a little bit longer too. I'm going to be more likely to buy that second pint or third pint or hang a little bit longer with my family for sure.
And then there's the obvious snackability factor. Yes. And then I think, and making everything seem so much more delicious and tasty and romantic, because here you are, you can bring it back to the classics or the artisan movement, and just like putting it all together, it just embellishes everything else. It's just super great.
I think what's also good is that what we learned, especially during COVID, is that people want a food program, or you have to sell food to sell the beer. There were some restrictions during COVID, like you can only sell liquor with food. And here's a great chance to have even a takeaway program, not just serving in the brewery, but also a takeaway program. Like take your growler with you along with a plate of cheese. I mean, these are these opportunities for you for those other source of revenue to take for this.
No,
and
absolutely.
That's a great opportunity for, again, you already have the people in front of you. You want them to stay longer. You want to bring the families to come together. It gives you a chance also to work with your local partners in your area.
I think this is a fantastic topic to have. I mean, events are something breweries are putting a lot of focus on these days. And, an event that includes food, especially food people are already familiar with, it is a great way to just, have your audience, stick around even longer. Now, Cara, I know my usual places I pick up cheese, but I imagine it's a little bit different for brewers that are looking to try to source cheese for a program like this. Talk to me a little about, local distributors, national distributors. Where should breweries be looking to get this cheese?
So it really comes down to your knowledge of cheese. If you don't need a lot of help hand holding, you can go to the national guys and find a way to get to their catalog so you can pick it and choose it yourself. The regional guys are great too, but then they can offer a little more help. They might have a few more local cheeses. And then I like to think if you're going boutique style, where it's like you have someone who has probably got a CCP like myself, they love cheese, they're going to come to your place and bring samples. I think then that's a great option too, but it's all about how much time and knowledge do you have to think about cheese, and then you can choose from there. And then also think about the pricing from there, because the boutique guy will cost more, but the national guy might be like not as much. It's really getting to know what you're most comfortable with to pick that relationship.
Do you think there's a good place to start for a brewery first looking to get into the cheese game?
It's a tough question. It's also like what's available to you based where your brewery is, right? Like if you can only have, say, a Cisco, you just have to go with Cisco. But I think more and more there's more regional guys opening up. There are people who are trying to expand what's available. So maybe start with the regional. Regional is a great way to go. The middle guy in between.
So reach out, get to know your local or your regional distributor. But then, how much do you start with? If you're looking to add cheese in, how much did you, get on hand to get this going?
So funny enough, as a salesperson, I'm going to say less is more because I think then you can actually focus and train your brewery staff to understand the cheeses, where if you go like 10 different cheeses, you're going to drive yourself insane. I start with three best sellers, say like a Swiss Alpine style, like Kalahakar, or a Moliterno Tartufo, which is an Italian cheap smoke with truffle, or say a French brie, like the Isigny brie that I sell. Like any of those options, you put them on a cheese plate, they'll work really well. You go with like your top best three, and I think you're golden. Don't overcomplicate it. I think and buy a big wheel of cheese, because if you buy lots of small pieces, they'll dry out, they'll die. Like go big, but don't buy a lot at the same time.
And when you're looking at these cheeses, I imagine you should be looking at the beer menu you plan to have on when these cheeses will be served, just to make sure they're a good match. Or, does that not matter as much? Is it more about just the overall cheese experience, and these cheeses will work with many styles of beer?
Yeah. So like certain ones, like for example, Kalahakar is one that will go with everything. Brie tends to go with a lot. So and the truffle cheese, okay, might be tricky. So think about that one, because it has that strong, intense truffle flavor. But yeah, it's good to go with the classics and the bangers, because like a cheddar per se or something like that. Maybe instead of just doing like the block of cheddar, go with like a Vermont cheddar or a cloth bound cheddar. Like those are the nuances that you can look for. And then if you can try the beer and the cheese together first, I highly, highly recommend eating some cheese with it first, and then planning that menu, and then looking at the pricing as well.
I think trying the cheese is a fundamental part of this experience. If you want to craft the right experience for your guests, you have to understand that. And one thing you noted, having 10 new cheeses at your start of your new program might be a little overwhelming for your team. What type of activities or education is available for, brewery staff so they can be properly trained on cheese?
Totally. Well, one first pick right off the top of my head is Adam's Cheese Professor site. They have a lot of super great articles. They have a great editor there, Amy. She's just really good at getting the best writers and getting the best content. So I totally would look at that. And then there's just like the classic books as well. There's the Cheese Primer by Steve Jenkins. That's an old school one. So some of it's a little out of date, the knowledge, but anything by Max McCallan's also great. So anything books wise, I go to first, and then the online stuff, because a lot of the online stuff, they copy and paste from other weird places. And so it's not always accurate. So the books are better on this one sometimes.
Love it. Now, Adam, talk to me a little bit more about, what we can find in the Cheese Professor and what types of resources you have there for someone just getting into the cheese world.
Yeah, that's a good question. And Cara mentioned that. Sorry for my background, New York noise. Basically, we do a lot of pairing articles, and we'll say like, here are 5 interesting porters and stouts with 3 interesting cheeses, and we use Cara type people for our articles. So you'll find a lot of good content on pairings on the Cheese Professor as well as the Alcohol Professor website. And again, if you are looking at, let's say you are a brewer and you have, let's say, a wide range of stouts, and you look in Google search at stouts and beer pairing, cheese pairings, you'll find a lot of content for us.
Do both of you feel that offering cheese is something that should just be offered at the counter for any time a guest orders, just as an add-on for their experience? Or do you prefer doing, just more event-like, pairings where you're going to have those flight of beers served with that flight of cheese? What do you recommend?
For me, I think it's better to be consistent and have it every day. And also I was going to make this point earlier, in that you don't need a kitchen. It's like logistically easier too. You just need a lowboy. You just need some refrigeration and some really good cheese knives. So for me, it's a great way to have, people stay a little while longer, get that cheese snack. I think it's great to offer it all the time, because events, then you get overwhelmed too, like with the amount, like everyone's in there for like an event, it's like 50 people plus, and you're trying to cut cheese. Nobody likes that. Like, maybe business wise you like it, but it can be tough. So I think it's
Work
better.
your way up to that, I would imagine.
Yeah. And then maybe have that local cheesemonger cheese shop help you out. Maybe they can do some of the cutting work.
To recap, sorry, Cara, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just like I was saying, you can work with a local cheese shop or cheese group producer, and they can like maybe send a monger out there and help you do the event, and you can co-brand it. Something like that might work, even if you're going.
Great idea for a partnership, indeed. No, looking back at some of those cheeses you mentioned earlier, I'd love you to recap, let's say, like the top 5 cheeses you typically would recommend to a brewery to get started.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning before, there's a cheese called Holla, and that's a Swiss Alpine style cheese. They're super easy to eat. The other one I was mentioning was the Moliterno Tartufo, which is a pecorino sheep smoked cheese from Italy with truffle. Then there's the brie, the Isigny brie that I love. It's very buttery, easy to eat, 60% double creme. If you want to go one step above double creme brie, you can go to triple creme, which is super butterfat. It's over 72% butterfat. And then you can do Briat Savran, or there's a local New York one called Kunik that's nationally sold. And then another style is the cheddar I was mentioning before. So cloth-bound cheddar, Jasper Hill and Cabot sell. They do one Cabot cloth-bound, aged by Jasper Hill. And also, that's a note. Sorry, cheese knowledge going around here. There are producers, and then there are people who age the cheese. So if you start to see things like that, you're getting into better quality. The fact that there are 2 groups attached to this is it's cool, because someone specializes in aging the cheese. They pick the cheese and then they decide how long it'll age. That's a true art form. It derives from France. It's called affinage. So sorry, I did a little curveball there. But okay, so we did brie, cheddar, and then you could do fresh things. You could do mozzarella, you could do feta. But again, these are styles of cheese also that I went through. So that's when you start to learn more, you can kind of pick those. You can go stinkier with wash rind styles like a Poisse. You can go to Taleggio from Italy. Taleggio is a good one. Taleggio is not very expensive. It's like an Italian brie, but it has an orange outside, so it's a little bit funky, but not too funky. So that's okay. That's off the top of my head. Those are a bunch of really great cheeses to start with.
I feel like we could talk a lot more than an hour about cheese today.
I'm so sorry.
This is fantastic. I'm loving this. You're making me a little hungry right now. So the breweries decide upon the cheese they want. Should they buy it by the wheel per pound or by the unit? What's the difference when we're looking at how to buy cheese?
Yeah, that's a great thing just to even understand for your from the monetary perspective, because sometimes when you buy by the each, it's actually way more expensive. You really got to look at it, break it down to the ounce. But I think it's important to know the difference, because you may think something's cheaper than it really is. I think buying by the wheel is fantastic, especially if you're a busy brewery. Why not? You're going to get more for your money, and it will stay alive longer. It won't dry out. It won't. The smaller pieces, like I was saying before, they'll die. They'll become overripe. The bigger it is, the size-wise of the wheel, it's better. If you're doing it by the unit, I will say the nice part is that can look really attractive on a cheese plate if you're giving just like a whole piece of cheese. If you can figure out the pricing and the pairing with that can look really cool, but you want to make sure you get the right amount of money for it.
I think what Cara mentioned earlier is that it's very important to start, not say simple, but simple. Start with 3 or 4 and see what really goes through, and see what, again, we can say it's going to be really interesting for, let's say, a Southwest brewery to go more a spicier Jack type style, because they prefer that compared to, let's say, some of the Midwest ones that's a different other style of cheese or the different type of style of beer. So I would start off simple, 3 or 4 in the beginning, as Cara was mentioning, and then see what's really selling through or what people are reordering from it. And you can also pre-plate it, as Cara mentioned earlier. You can have like maybe 2 or 3, in the fridge ready to go when someone does come in. Okay, here's 3, boom, boom, boom. They're already pre-cut. Get another plate going after that.
I mean, I wish one of my local breweries had that pre-plated cheese. I could just go in and order every time I order that fantastic lager I always get.
And
You
that's
both
part of
make
the takeout. You know, that gives you the takeout option also. You pick up that growler or whatever it is, and you say, I'll take the plate with me.
Well, a neat thing about cheese too is it's something that you can serve immediately. Like if you go and order a pizza or more some sort of hot meal, it's going to take 10 to 20 minutes or so for it to come out. If you have cheese pre-cut, it's immediate, which I really like that option.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the like how you cut the cheese as well. Like you don't want to make it like too thin. It's kind of nice to have bigger chunks so that you get the full flavor and like there's a better mouthfeel to it. If you just do like shavings or something, like that could be really waxy and not so great. So it's great to know that like the shape. Should you like twist a knife and make it look like kind of like granular, like cool pieces of cheese, or is it better to do like little triangles, which can look great with like a basic sheep's milk manchego? That can look really cool with say a fig jam and a honey. You have a little charcuterie, and like you're good, and that could be $20, and it's set up, and it's let's go. I think it's also just fun. I'm going into the cool fun part, and that's once you get that going.
We're going to dive a little deeper into that in a minute, but one thing you mentioned a minute ago, was shelf life. So how can brewery staff understand how long a cheese is good for? Are there codes, best by dates? How do we know that the cheese might not be fit to still serve to a customer?
Totally. So a lot of it is just using your senses at first. I mean, cheese is like all food stuff. I think it has to have these best by dates, but cheese is a living, breathing thing, and it can go longer most often than the dates. But I will say, like, if something is super brown and wet looking, that's not good. If it's very dried out, that's not good. If it actually smells bad in a way that you can't deal with, that's not good. If something is really sour and bitter, that's not good. I know some people try to play that off like, oh, it's the cheese. It's like, not really. That's the very, very end of a cheese life. So I think it's super important to understand, one, what bad cheese looks like. And then second, I would say if it's a US dated thing, you'll know what a best by looks like. But if it's a lot code, like 3 numbers, it's good to reach out to the producer to follow out what that means, when it was made. Usually it works with a Julian calendar where each day has a number, and that's the date of production. But you don't know, like, oh, is it 85 days from production or is it 100 days? So it's good to kind of maybe get to know who made that cheese, and they'll tell you what the best by is.
Good info there. Then when it comes to, serving cheese and proper handling of cheese, what are some best practices you recommend?
Well, I'll tell you one right now. Use cheese paper for wrapping up your cheese, and then put plastic wrap over it. Because
for cheese paper, can we get this at the grocery store? We can be getting it from the distributor. Where is this coming from?
So if you have a friend at Whole Foods, you can get the paper just from their counter. No, but also parchment paper is great. And there is a group, I don't remember the brand exactly off the top of Formaticum. There we go. Formaticum is a brand that makes cheese paper, but it's maybe on the more expensive. So parchment paper is the cheaper. But if you want to be like, this is made for cheese paper, that's a very good one. And then you put the plastic wrap over that, and it will stop the cheese from drying out, and it won't get a plasticky flavor, that's another thing to think about big time. Before you cut a piece of cheese off the wheel, take a thin layer off, because even though I'm saying we're doing all the safe care stuff, it still will get like an oxidized, you know what I mean? When you take the first bite of something that's been in the fridge, and nobody really understands that unless they've been like serving cheese forever and ever, but it sucks when you get a bite like that. So it's best to like trim that little bit off before you start serving it to people.
That's really interesting. So that's your chance to make a first impression. So if that first impression is that oxidized bite, might not go as well as you hope.
It's an epic fail. I mean, I've had it happen to me where someone's like really excited to show me some cheese, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then I take a bite and I'm like, oh shit, you didn't clean this. You didn't like take this little swipe off. Like, you gotta, and just make it look cool. If you can make it like a long square, rectangle type piece or a triangle piece, something a little more refined is a nice approach as well.
So you say clean the cheese. How do we clean the cheese?
Just taking like a nice cheese knife, like a thin, so if it's a creamy cheese, you want to use a thinner knife so it doesn't stick to the knife. If it's a firmer cheese, it's good to have a knife that doesn't have a pointy edge, because you don't want to, so because there's like a way it works when you're cutting, you have to push down on one side to get the cheese cut. So those are my rules for cutting cheese right now a little bit. It takes practice though. There's cheese wires too. That's helpful as well.
So let's go a little bit deeper into, the cutting of the cheese? Because we're talking about knives and cutting. What are some other tips you have for brewery when they're just getting into this with regard to, how they should, what utensils they should have, how many different types of cheese knives should they have? Is there a few certain cuts they should be aware of that make it easy for them? That way they're not trying to remember 10 different cuts. What are your tips?
Yeah, I think it's practice and definitely preview plating. Like you don't want to just like throw it on a paper plate. And if you can, it depends on your style of brewery, right? Like, is it a paper plate crowd and you're just like snacking super low key, or is it like more refined and you need to have like wood cheese boards and like little cute knives and things like that? It's all about the style of the brewery. I think also like if you're going for more of a European style, it could be like really elegant and I don't know. You could look at like the Belgium area cheese plates. You can always go back to the country, I feel like, or the terroir, like the land, and kind of start to take notes on nuances from there that could make it better. Like maybe there's a local flour you could put there. These are the little things. And then in knives, like I was mentioning before, there are hard cheese knives, there are soft cheese knives. If you're cutting a blue cheese, you don't want to mix that knife with another cheese because then the blue will permeate the other cheese, and actually that cheese will start to grow some blue on it at some point. So don't mix your cheese knives, or clean them in between, of course. But you can find out how to cut these things online, I believe. You can also talk to cheesemongers. They're your best friends, or the sales reps who are at these boutique places or regional places. They'll also give you some tips, but also just practice. Practice helps, and you'll start to see how things crumble or not crumble.
With knives, do you think it's best to have it pre-cut when you hand it to the guest, or is offering your guests who are eating this cheese, giving them the utensils, is that something you like to see happen?
I think it's better to have it pre-cut. I notice people eat more of a cheese when it's portioned out to the ounce already. If you just put like, say like a small wheel of something or like a chunk of something, let's say, people are really timid about cracking into a cheese. They're like, oh, it looks so nice. I don't want to, and it's until it's like decimated that everyone's like, they'll go at it. So I think it's really nice to portion the cheese first if you can.
And also, if you're with a bunch of people, there's 3 or 4 of you around a table, it's a chance to do equal share. So you don't have a fight over the cheese knife.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So I know when I have like a charcuterie platter in front of me, I will eat it till it's gone, no matter how much cheese and meat's on it. It's just going to disappear. So, but obviously you can't give people an unlimited supply of cheese. When we talk portions, what do you recommend for just a good serving?
Yeah, so
break it down by like how much you should have on a plate, how much of unique cheeses. I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best thing, Andrew, is really to, again, keep it simple with the 3 cheese rule, I think. Then you can step it up to 5 cheeses on a plate, or like a crazy maximum 10, because 10 is like overloaded. Your palate will be burnt out. But a 3 or 5 is really nice. And then depending on the amount of people eating the cheese plate, say it's like 4 people, you could do an ounce or an ounce and a half per cheese, and that will take care of everyone on a 3 to 5 spread. You know what I mean? So 5 being like a nice middle ground, and then that's almost a quarter pound it's a little over a quarter pound of cheese. So that's enough for somebody, and you're drinking beer. So I think it's really good to keep it in the ounce to 1.5 ounce range. 2 is very generous. Yeah, for sure, on a cheese plate.
Well, that sounds fantastic. So we're looking at these cheese plates, and you recommended, maybe starting with 3 different cheeses. As you dive deeper into a cheese program, are there unique angles breweries can take when, featuring just local cheeses, perhaps imported cheeses, or even, dare I say, like a vertical of cheddars from all over the place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's really great to know what kind of personality your brewery is first, to sort of then pair it to the cheese, and then you can start to do those kind of really cool, like you can have an all American plate, or you can have an all New York plate, or you can have then, like I mentioned to you earlier, like hybrid plate where you have a mix from all over, because let's say you understand cheese well enough that you can blend it by texture. You can look at it by milk type, which is cow, goat, sheep, and buffalo milk. If you start to understand those nuances in the cheese, you can really just pair up. I think vertical pairings are really cool. Not enough people really know what they are. To have like a cheddar from multiple places, or a brie from, say, one from the US, one from France, one from, I don't know, somewhere else, California, say. Like, I think that's a cool way to start to understand a cheese in general. So it's really, again, knowing the personality and then looking back at the history of, say, the cheese or the history of where you are and trying to make like a story from that and go and build up on it. Say if you're Prohibition style, maybe there's like cheeses that started in another time that's close to that. And then you can do a play on that, or there's colonial something, or, it's fun if you can put history into it, I think.
Oh yeah, I love learning. And earlier we talked about, how important it is to educate the staff on what they're serving. Do you have any recommendations for information to provide the guests? Should you provide them any tasting notes on a sheet of paper? Any tips to make their experience more memorable? I know a lot of breweries are, challenged with having the right amount of staff these days, so they might not get the time to do as much engagement as they'd like. So what are some other unique ways we can teach the guest about cheese?
I think if anyone ever hands me a piece of paper where I can take tasting notes and have the title of the producer and what the cheese name is, so I can come back and reorder it or buy it somewhere else, I'm thrilled. I'm like, bravo, you did well. You did really, really well. So I think that's great. If we want to go a little more modern and be a little more tech friendly, we could probably do a QR code that puts it to like a page that then you can save and order up. Maybe link it to a shop or, the brewery itself, so you can order it again or something like that. But I totally think it's very important to get the correct information. So get the producer name, get the milk type, get the type of cheese it is, and put it on there and spell it right as well, get it done.
Adam, how do you go ahead? Sorry.
But I firmly agree with Cara. I think the more you give tasting notes, it allows them to also, it's almost like you're a guide to like what you should be discovering, finding. Maybe you don't know what you're tasting something, can't describe it, but a good tasting set of tasting notes or pairings, it allows, let's say, you're at the brewery, they have, let's say, a 5-beer sampler thing. And here are the 3 cheeses you try with each thing. Or like, here's the brewer's notes with the cheesemaker's notes. The more you get that information, they're more involved. I learned more here. I enjoy that. And then it can be then seasonal. I think one of the things I like to say also is like gives a chance to also work with your local producer. If you are in a certain area and you have, let's say, 2 local cheesemakers in your area, it's a great chance to really align yourselves and work together. They can hopefully sell your beer in their place, or they can say, hey, go take your cheese and bring it over to the brewery. Or like they have this information they can share with each other. I mean, it's a chance to really do farm to table on both sides of the house.
Yeah, indeed. No, Adam, from your perspective, how do you think having a strong cheese game can, increase appreciation of beer in the brewery?
I think it totally helps. I mean, you're basically having a full experience. You're getting a chance to have pairings. You're getting a chance to taste different things. You have a chance to eat some food and not just get on the road unless you bike to the brewery, but it gives you a chance to have some food and some bread and some cheese and more time to talk to someone, not just sitting there sipping a beer or eating pretzels. It's a chance to expand your palate. And sometimes if people get more involved in these type of programs, they can have rotating cheese boards. They can have, it allows the brewery more swag. I mean, you can put together a cheese board with your brewery's name on it. There's more things you can be more creative on your swag. Maybe you want to sell that cheese board later on to people. Here's Copland's Brewery, and here's the cheese board, but there's a lot of things you can do with that.
No, that's a great idea, Adam. So I think we're at the point where we're going to talk about the elephant in the room right now. Cara, pricing. What should we be charging for cheese and tap rooms?
Yeah. First break it down to the ounce. A lot of stuff sold by pounds, of course. So get it down to the ounce so you can figure it out. But then I like it in the 20 to 25 range. I think that's very comfortable for a lot of people. If you go 30, 35, might get a little tricky. And if you can get under 20, then you're actually in a crazy spot where you can make a lot of cheese plates. And I think people will because it's hard to do. I would say you could probably pull off more imported cheeses, funny enough, for that kind of price point. If you go artisanal American, it's going to be too expensive. They don't have EU governments helping them out, so they need a higher price point. Yeah, I 20, 25, you're in a golden spot. And that's for like a 4-person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's the 4-person spot. If you can get the 3 cheeses. But again, this is like really going into the details of it. Get the ounces, make sure you have the accoutrement. If you're making the accoutrement, figure out how much that's going to cost. Accoutrement meaning like the honeys, the nuts, the dried fruit. Maybe there's a few pieces of salami on there or something, charcuterie. I think it's possible still. It's harder and harder to do it nowadays, but and then like 30, 35 is at the max. Otherwise, you're going into like raw seafood tower level of pricing, and I don't think anyone wants that. So keep it simple, keep it real.
So Cara and Adam, before today's call, I was a big advocate of food and breweries. I'm still a huge advocate of that. I love going, I love having a meal, or I love literally just having a bag of chips. If they offer it to me while I'm drinking, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to say yes, no questions asked, and I'm going to hang out a little bit longer. But, talking about cheese today, I think made me appreciate, why breweries should add cheese to their brewery a little bit more. I thought it was a great idea for just an offering, a great idea for an event. But when you have cheese in front of you, it adds a whole new level to the experience. If Adam and I are eating a pizza together, we're not going to analyze that pepperoni. We're not going to talk about the cheese. We're just going to eat it, right? And Cara, if you and I are just snacking on some pretzels, we're not going to analyze anything about those pretzels. But I think having that cheese component really adds that additional level of engagement, education that's going to result in people hanging out a little bit longer, because when do you get to enjoy cheese on this level?
No, totally. I mean, it's totally an opportunity. I think there's also like a way to like just make it with your eyesight looking at cheese, like the ooey gooiness or the popping color of, say, like an orange mimolette. I think it will make them hungry. It'll make them want to drink more. You're talking again about flavors, like you mentioned, Andrew, where you can like play back and forth. Oh, I think I like this pairing best, or I like that best, and just try to recreate it later. Or, so they're going to take home cans of the beer and like buy the cheese at a shop later. And it's just this awesome synergy that like, I'm very excited to see more breweries take on cheese plates. I know I've been talking about it for the last few years with Adam, and I'm excited to see someone really put an awesome program together.
And I'm excited to visit. So, Cara, when we're talking about breweries selling the cheese plate, should they have a display case near the register? What do you see work? Because obviously, when you see something, you want it more. And so often with breweries and let's say to-go beer, it's hidden in the back corner. Some people don't even know it's an offering. How do you make the guest aware outside of, encouraging it, that you have this awesome item on your menu?
Oh man, that's a really great question. Because if you could have like a glass case near the register where people could see these giant wheels of cheese sitting out, it would be really, really sexy cool. Like I would be so excited about that.
I'm closing my eyes right now and imagining it.
Yeah, like because wheels of cheese, when you see them anywhere, they can be very impressive. Like they can be like, I mean, Conte, for example, has an 86-pound wheel. Now, I'm not saying a brewery should get a giant wheel like that, but like even seeing a giant wedge of it would be kind of cool. Or the mimolette I was mentioning before, it looks like a cratered moon cantaloupe ball with this bright orange paste. And so, yeah, I think it's a nice idea to show people what these cheeses are. Also, they may not know the names right away, whereas you do, they don't. So seeing it, they'll be like, I would like this one. It would, I think, yeah, having some sort of display near your register, near a checkout where they're ordering, some sort of snack plus a cheese plate could be really cool.
No,
I think also, I mean, put it politely, it's food porn, and you want to give food porn out there. And it also allows someone who may be scared or reluctant to make the wrong decision and say, I want that. I like that. That looks good. Or I want that plate, or that plate looks good. Many times you've been in, like, travel overseas, sometimes you see, I just want like number 18 because that's what it looks like in the bowl, But if you put a plate like that out there, to a certain extent, people say, oh, that looks good to me. Besides the wheels, like I want that. And that's like, it's a trigger for them.
Awesome. Really good tips there. Now, for anyone listening today or listening in the future who's interested in starting this cheese program, what do you both recommend as one thing they need to do right now as soon as they stop listening to you both? That number one action item they need to take away from today.
That's a really, really good question. I would say personally, I guess I would go out to a store that sells cheese and just pick a few out to try and pair with the beer that I already make, and then and see how that goes. And then I would inquire about those cheeses to my distributor to start planning and getting pricing and availability, because not all cheeses, Adam mentioned seasonality before, so there's some cheeses that are not available year round. Cheese making as a tradition is you get milk in the spring, the summer, and then you have like fall, winter, and then you age it. It's like it's not usually around all the time, but we're living in modern day, so there is cheese available more often, but small guys, not so much. So my point is, start at your local spot, buy some cheese, then talk to a distributor, and then start pricing, menu planning for real, and staff training too. Yeah.
That's a little bit more than one action item, but I'll take it. Very helpful, Cara. Now, Adam, outside of going to the Cheese Professor site, what do you recommend someone do right now?
Go back to the Cheese Professor site. But no, like what Cara said also, I would basically look at my certain drive radius, like some local cheese shops, and said, hey, make a call and say, I'm an owner, you're an owner. Can you give me something like a half hour before you open up whatever it is? Can I bring some beers in and can I pull some cheeses you like? And let's try our own pairings. Try to work with the local community first, obviously. Let's go to our local brewery. And then go back to, if you have to source other places, but at least like cheddar's good with this type of stout, or what cheese should go well with good style beer, or even a hard seltzer, what would taste well with that type of thing. So I would definitely reach out to the local.
Maybe like a slice of just American cheese with that seltzer. Is that probably a good pairing?
If you're selling it, sure. I think also a key thing to note is also, I mean, Cara can jump on this also, is like what's your expected margins? What your margin in on a beer you're selling for $8 at the brewery, it's like, maybe cost you $1 to make, it's huge profit. You're not making the same type of profit margin as a food product. So just put that in perspective when you're putting together that $20 plate, the $25 plates, maybe that $25 plate, maybe a couple dollars more, but you basically keep the margins you want to have.
A good takeaway is right there. Now, Cara, I could be setting myself up for failure on this one because I didn't ask if you were a beer drinker, but what are your personal beer and cheese favorite pairings?
Oh yeah, I'm totally doing dry January right now. That's a really, really awesome question. I do love IPAs with strong cheddars. I think those always kind of like a pineapple-y kind of sharp cheddar. I think it's super great. I love that. I also think like lighter beers, so maybe like pilsners are funny because they can be kind of bitter sometimes, but or a low like American lager type can go really well with a brie, because brie traditionally is great with champagne. So it's like that lighter, highly carbonated type drink could go great with a brie. And so those are some of my right off the bat. But then if you go into the Belgium styles, that's good with like a stinky wash rind, something a little more funky, funk with funk, and that maltiness and that high alcohol. It can be good. So right off the top of my head, those are just a few, but I can go on and on. This is like, I love this. And I like beer. I do like beer.
Love it. Adam, how about you? Any favorites?
That's a good question. I'd probably go with some Hefeweizen style blonde ales with some brie, as Cara mentioned earlier, something lighter. If I can pair some Belgians with some Belgian style Bell type solutions, I'm open, man. I really am. I don't have really a set thing. I like to be creative that way. I also like a spice, like a pepper jack with a nice porter or stout, just that balance to it. So I'm into that also.
I think that's the fun of, pairings and adding new things to your repertoire, finding what works for you. Just like when you, go into a brewery for the first time, you might have a flight, find the beer that calls your name. And just like when you go in and try some cheese, you're going to find what matches best with the beers you're drinking.
Yes.
Definitely.
Awesome. Now, as we wind down, Cara and Adam, if someone's interested in getting a hold of you, what's the best way to do so? And, anything else you'd like to add?
You can always write to me on Instagram. I'm at Cutting the Curd. I'm also at Cara Warren. So if you direct message me through that, it's pretty easy to find me.
Tell me more about your podcast. How can we listen?
So it's available wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's on the Heritage Radio Network, which is a network that was started as like a slow food, grassroots, cool, talking about different types of food things. I have the cheese program that's been around for over 10 years. I'm the current host, but I mean, it won't forever be my baby. It was started by Ann Saxelby, who's a legendary cheese person. So it's a cheese industry program. It's heavy industry, but if you want to get into curd nerdy life, it's a good one.
I love all the puns today. Thanks for all the great information, Cara. Adam, how about you? How can
you can reach me at info@alcoholprofessor.com or info@cheeseprofessor.com. Also, Alcohol Professor on Instagram. I have Skype. I have WeChat. I have WhatsApp. I got everything.
And if someone's interested in getting involved with the New York International Beer Competition, which is, going on shortly, how can we do so?
Yeah, please go to nybeercompetition.com. All our judges are trade buyers. We judge by category and by price, and we try to showcase those winners on our site, on both sites, the Alcohol Professor and the Cheese Professor. So yeah, we're very excited for our 12th annual New York International Beer Competition, and also to our friends in the cider world, our 5th annual cider competition. So we're very excited for pairings of those.
So if I win in that competition or I get recognized, are you going to tell me which cheese pairs best with my beer?
Well, I'll do my best.
Worst case, we can reach out to Cara. She'll give some insight, right?
Yes.
I'm down. Just give me a call. I'm happy to help.
You heard it here, everybody. Well, Cara and Adam, this conversation has been fantastic. I feel I need to go to my grocery store right now and get some cheese to have in just a little bit. So thank you so much for all this great education. I look forward to seeing you both for beer and cheese, hopefully later this year. Cheers. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.